This is Kate Stalker interviewing Kate Heiber Cobb. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
Tell me why you want to share your story.
I would like to share my story because I think maybe I can give a different lens of looking at Monona.
Great. Let's start with your history and come back to the present in a little bit. Tell us about where you were born and how you grew up.
So I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and at 3 our family moved to Brookfield, to a little dead-end street surrounded by prairie, woodland, and wetland. And I have 6 siblings and grew up and graduated from Brookfield Central High School and went up to UW Eau Claire briefly and then ended up in Madison.
Wow. And how did you end up in Madison?
A man.
Oh. Is that how you ended up in Monona?
No, I was long married when we moved to Monona.
So tell me about some of your early influences. People or things?
Sure. I had a teacher in grade school. I was always a little out of the box and too mouthy, so school was a difficult process and journey for me. And we had a class that there were others like me, and the school was a little maybe dumb about dealing with it. So there was another class of same age kids, and instead of intermingling everybody, they kept it separate. So we had a teacher that was brought in to try to bring it into, to bring our class a little into line. And he was from the Wales School for the Boys, is where he taught. But he was a wonderful man. He was Polish and he was very funny, and he was a disciplinarian, but from a humorous place. And we just fell in love, and he was wonderful. And so he was hired then to teach us a second year. And what I want to say, he was a huge influence because he could see in children their joy, their beauty and talents that sometimes our culture really couldn't see, right?
Yes.
And he came to our wedding, and I danced with him at my wedding many years later and was able to be there for him when he died of cancer. So he was a big influence.
Wow, apparently. Good
Yeah.
for you. Good for you to have someone like that. So when did you come to Monona?
My husband and I moved to Monona, 18 years ago, I think it is. So I believe it's 18 years actually in a couple days.
And what brought you here?
The cost of housing was better than the east side of Madison.
Uh-huh.
And I found the house that was on the Parkway, and I walked in to look at it. It was for sale, and I walked out on the second story screen porch and saw the parkway and the creek, and I just said, this is it.
Wonderful.
And we made an offer and we moved in.
And tell me about that first summer. What surprises awaited you?
So the biggest surprise was a day or so after we moved in, the Carneys moved in to set up for the big Monona Festival. And we realized that we had a Ferris wheel looking right into our bathroom that didn't even have curtains yet. So we had no idea really about the Monona Festival. I don't know how we were so naive, having lived in Madison for decades, but we were. And so for many years we gave parties and invited our friends and family in to watch the fireworks. And now as we've gotten older, we aren't as into it, and the smell from the fireworks is like we have to shut all our windows. There's aspects of it that have just changed. So
How has your neighborhood changed during the time you've been here?
How has our neighborhood changed? So I think it's changing from, there were quite a number of elderly people, and now there's more younger families, though our immediate neighborhood still has quite a few elderly, which I guess my husband and I can be tossed in there now in our mid to late 60s. So I think, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, how about businesses? What changes have you seen in businesses in Monona? Places to shop or eat?
Oh, that's
Anywhere
interesting.
you loved that's gone, or anything new you...
Well, I don't know if Ben Franklin was Monona, but that was really sad loss. The hardware store, which isn't Monona, but it was as close to Monona as we get for hardware stores, that closing is the second hardware closing in the 18 years we've been here. So that's kind of sad too. A lot of new restaurants have opened up, and now there's a big new development on the river. It'll be curious to see what that is. So we go out in Monona, but not that much. We're not big goer-outers right now in our life, so we're kind of stay-at-homers.
Okay. So what do you and your husband enjoy doing together?
He's a musician, so we do go and listen to music. I am a hiker and nature lover, so we do hang out in nature. We camp, we do road trips, explorations, travel. What else do I do? I do swim, kayak, those kind of things.
Very active. So I know you are involved in many things, and I can't even begin to name them all, but I would love for you to tell us about as many of them as you are able, starting with the Permaculture Guild and how you got there.
Sure. So the Madison Area Permaculture Guild began a little over 11 years ago. I had become certified in permaculture 12 years ago, over 12 years ago, and I just wanted to have conversation and find out who in the Madison area was into permaculture and the solutions that I think it offers. And so I called a meeting. I worked at the East Madison Monona Coalition for the Aging or Elderly at that point in time. And so they allowed me to use a room one evening, and 3 people showed up. And the next month, I think 7 people showed up. And then there was 25 people the month after that. And so it's an organization that is really a club, and I was determined to allow it to emerge. And what I mean by that, I worked a lot in nonprofits and cooperative and collective world over my adult life, and I didn't want the tedious nature of administration, and that it wouldn't be about the mission, but it had to be about the money making, and I didn't want it about the money making. Mm-hmm. So it's emerged, and I think our Google group has, I don't know, over 500 people. Right now we're doing summer tours all over the Madison area. All the different people that have been involved are offering up site tours of their properties, both rural and urban and suburban, so that's very fun.
And you manage all of this?
I oversee kind of the organization of it, but they're on their own. I already have missed one tour, and I'll take in what I'm available for, but I'm pretty busy. The other thing that I'm busy with, I have a very small business called Sustainability on Stilts, and I do consulting on permaculture and design and site visits, teaching. I teach a lot. I teach through Edgewood College. I just ended my teaching for the last 7 years with Madison College, so on various topics. The other thing that I'm involved with is something called Braiding Wisdom, and it's taking my love of earth and nature and natural systems and bringing it more into the spiritual world, or the world of soul, you might want to call it, and being able to learn how to listen to the land and listening to the creatures, the wildlife, everything that has so much to tell us, and that we could learn so much from as a species.
Wow, that's a lot. You're involved in a lot of things, Kate. Tell me about the Permaculture Guild. Some story that maybe defines what it's all about and to you.
Sure. The mission of the Permaculture Guild is about education. So as I said, for me personally, it was allowing something to emerge. And so the beauty of seeing it thread out. So we've been teaching the Permaculture Design Certificate course here in town for 9 years, I guess, close to 10 years. And the Guild has overseen the last 7 years of that. So we've graduated, I don't know, it must be close to 200 people over those years. And to see it thread out in all the different ways. So that's part of that emergence. That's the most exciting part of it. When I hear somebody's story, like maybe they don't even live around here, but it's emerged out in a different way. It's threaded in that way like a spider web. That is the gift. That's the reciprocity.
Yes.
Right? So also we are fortunate enough to have that and the Permaculture Teacher Training Certificate course that we just started doing this year, accredited through Edgewood College. So that's been a real delight to have it accredited. So
Great. And how about Braiding Wisdom? Can you tell us a typical story about what you do?
Sure. So our focus has been on women in nature retreats. So we've done a few of those. The last one was last summer up on the very northern tip of Wisconsin on Lake Superior. And how delightful is that, just to be on the land and with a circle of women doing various exercises and experiences and getting to know each other and learning how to be on the land and retreat on the land. So that the land isn't just about giving to us, but there's a story of reciprocity. So how do we learn how to listen? How do we learn how to be on it in more of an observational and silent way? The other story was we did one the year before at Holy Wisdom Monastery, and there was a beautiful story out of that one. There was a young woman that brought her mom along, who's probably closer to my age, a little younger, and she was not a winter gal, and it was during the winter, and it was during a pretty massive winter storm the one day that we were in retreat, and going out and being in it and asking trees and birds and wind for information or for whatever would come to her through doing that experience. She, at the end of the retreat, said she fell in love with winter again, and she understood nature in a different way. And that was such a rich story, because this was someone who was just kind of dragged along because her daughter wanted her to be, but it still had big impact and changing impact on her life.
Oh, that's a great story. And I know that you spend a lot of time quietly reflecting on the outdoors. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So when I had that vision on the screen porch when we bought our house, when I walked through it and it was for sale and I knew I had to live there, it was because of all the nature right out our backyard. And so the creek and the parkway abut our yard, and I have been into nature a very long time and into nature spirituality since I was 22, so over 44 years. And I started seeing the great blue herons, the green herons that nest on the island, the kingfishers, the fox, the raccoons, all the different birds, the hummingbirds, the Baltimore Orioles, who come in and nest over the creek every single year. I saw the losses of some of the big willow trees along the creek. In recent year and a half, I've seen tremendous flooding. I've seen painted turtles come back and the sound of frogs come back, which was odd in the earlier years. The frogs weren't there, and I think it's contaminated water, right? And so I started as a permaculturist noticing everybody's stormwater going into the creek that goes to Lake Monona, of course, under the road, and off into the canals and off into the bay, and noticed how many people were spraying their yards and how much fertilizer and chemicals were washing into the creek. And that made me sad. And sometimes it gets so smeggy, polluted. So one year, a big, huge grandpa snapper turtle came up on the rocks right behind us and died. And then another turtle came up. So a day or two later, I was back there again, and had come up and died right next to the grandpa. So it was another big but not as big snapper turtle. And I'll never know why that happened, but it was a powerful moment of like, well, why is that happening? And the one you could kind of like, well, maybe that turtle was old and it was his time. But then when the second one, I went, something else is going on in there. So watching the environment there, but the critters, and we have so many lovely critters, and it seems like a lot of people don't even notice or see them. So even in our neighborhood, there's a lot of traffic over on the other side of the creek. So at the wonderful children's playground and the ball fields, and they have soccer practice and games over there. On our side, not as much, but now because of all the water table is so high, so there's a lot of trees, shrubs, and plants that are dying because the water table is so high. And over quite a number of recent years, it seems that the oxygen levels in the creek have been affected, so fish die-offs and things like that. But lots of beauty. So my backyard, our backyard is very wooded now, and we have lots of habitats. We get lots of birds. This spring, we had a woodcock in our yard. We had brown thrashers. We had birds that I'd never seen before. And I think it's because the habitat. So when you think about habitat for these animals and birds, and particularly migrating through, we don't have very many places. Even the parkway, most of it, not all of it, but most of it is very sterile. It's grass, right? And it's there, and people think about it for people to use, but not the critters. That we need these green spaces to have them survive through these times that we're going through. Because even our farm fields in Dane County, it's inch to inch, plowed and planted. The hedgerows are gone, the tree lines are gone, and so they don't have a lot of those places, I call them wild zones, to really, when they're coming through, or even if they want to settle in, there's not enough of it to support them in food and habitat. So that's a passion of mine. Is like in permaculture, we call that zone 5. And I think about, what if we got a corridor of zone 5s, a wildness corridor, not just a wilderness corridor. That's something else, like moving over highways or under highways, but wild corridors. So those butterflies, those bees, those birds, those critters that need more than a small piece of property can actually survive.
That's a wonderful mission. Okay, I need to stop a second here and regroup. What do I want to ask you about? Oh, Squaw Bay. Can I ask you about Squaw Bay?
Yes.
Okay. So I know you spend a lot of time on Squaw Bay, but you don't call it Squaw Bay. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. Squaw Bay. So I call it Woman's Bay. So spelled WOMBYN', Woman's Bay. And the reason is, first of all, my personal wish would be for that to be renamed for obvious reasons for many people. And I don't need to talk about that a lot there. But it's a very spiritual place. It's a very sacred. The Indians used to live on that part of the shoreline and the woodlands there that are in that neighborhood. And though certainly the white people history is also there, it is this very special little place. There's a big island that's right out there, and some years Monona, at least when Mayor Bob was here, and years before he was mayor, they would send a boat of goats out there to eat invasives on the island. I love that story. I think it should be told over and over again. And but it's a lovely little island where lots of wildlife lives. So that's a zone 5. That's a wild zone. And it's so beautiful to kayak around it because there's painted turtles, there's green herons, blue herons, great blue herons. There's all sorts of birds. Sometimes the pelicans are flying over. And just down from there is the only wetland left on Lake Monona. It's tiny, but it is the only wetland that we've left on Lake Monona. So Woman's Bay, I like to go to. It's been pretty dirty the last couple of years again, which makes me sad, and it's because of all the heavy rainfall and then the washing in of all the chemicals and fertilizers from people wanting basically lawns that are like golf course greens, and kind of our sterile cultural desire for that. And so it's hard to go in. Sometimes I have to go in on an air mattress and make sure that my face and most of my private parts don't have water, right? Because it's that worrisome. And occasionally there's blue-green algae. But what's sacred about that place remains no matter the contamination of the water. So I often sing a water song that I learned to the water there. I sing it all over the country when I hit water. The chant is the water lullaby. Nibi wabo endayen aki misqui nibi wabo heya 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 hey heya 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 ho.
Oh, that was beautiful. And have people seen you, heard you do this, and do they ask you questions?
You know, there's very Kathy Thomas's husband is sometimes out because their yard abuts the parkway, but not too much. And Bob Miller used to live just a couple doors down, and he would, before I had a kayak, offer me his kayak. But it's really, sadly, a place that doesn't get used a lot. And sometimes you have to compete with the weed cutters that get parked there. But it's where the Monona Water Walk has always done its ritual. So there's another ritual coming up in July that Diana Aldrich is organizing. So it just truly, for many people, is a little kind of haven of quiet and that wildness, because there's not, so sadly, there's not people using it. And for me, joyously, there's not a lot of people using it. So it's that kind of juxtaposition.
Yes.
So
Has it been like that as long as you've lived here?
pretty much, yeah.
So it's not pollution dependent.
No, I mean, I think because Monona's had a pool, once the lakes started getting yucky, is people just stopped going to the beaches except to boat or water ski or kayak.
Mm-hmm. So shifting gears a little bit, what would you tell someone moving to Monona today?
Oh, I would tell them not to be put off by So many Mononans thinking you're not a Mononan unless you've lived here 40 or 50 years. And I think that's kind of classically small town thinking. One of the things is to get involved. So Tom and I started meeting a lot of Mononans when we got involved with the Natural Step Monona around sustainability. So long before I was in permaculture, I was in sustainability organizations and environmental groups. And we met just some wonderful people through that many have extended over the decades of that. So to find a little niche to hook in, and often for people, so a lot of young families are moving in, it'll be their kids. But if you're older or you choose not to have children or don't have children, it's find another little niche that you can get involved with.
Great advice. What accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, I have to say I feel very good about the Permaculture Guild and the community that has formed. Some people will laugh at this, but my husband and I have been together 42 years, and I think it's a real accomplishment. And it's a lot of joy and a lot of hard work, and I think that falls into line of both of us feeling that that's a wonderful accomplishment. I think that my love of people and community and family, along with my love and connection to nature, is in how I've managed to weave that together, feels right and good. I feel like I'm doing my soul work, like I'm living out the purpose that whatever your beliefs are, that I've been put here to do, and that feels good, and I'm not done.
Never,
No.
ever.
No.
Great.
And always educate yourself.
That's right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Kate,
you
for coming in today.
Thank you.